This week's show excites my inner space nerd as Azure gets an injection of Starlink satellite internet as well as services in preview and general availability. I also have a very welcome networking feature change and there is a new version of .NET. Sort of. I'm Lars Klint and all that is coming up on this episode of Azure This Week. Two of my favorite things are joining forces. Starlink satellite internet, which I've used for a year now, and Azure, which I've used for over a decade, are coming together to provide Azure Space with more oomph and more, well, space. Azure Space was announced 2 years ago, and this week sees the next wave of space products from Azure, which include Azure Orbital Cloud Access Preview. Not only is this an excellent name, I want Orbital Cloud, but it's also a one-hop cloud access from anywhere on the planet utilizing 5G and Starlink. The preview is for Azure government customers only and gives connectivity to Azure anywhere. Then there's general availability of Azure Orbital Ground Station. This satellite operator specific service is now available to enable satellite operators to focus on their satellites and operate from the cloud more reliably at lower cost and latency, as Microsoft puts it. And finally, Microsoft is accelerating the pace of digital transformation for satellite network operators. That also happens to be one of the best examples of marketing speak I have seen in a long time. If you want to know what that means, check out the link in the description for more. Azure Space is growing constantly and it's one of the areas of cloud computing that will enable most of us to get our applications and services to anywhere in the world. We might not use Azure Space directly, but it is an important part of the cloud computing story. I can't wait to see how it pans out and gets used. A small but very welcome update is here. If you use peered networks, you have likely come across running out of addresses for the peering, which is a real pain. Your network would go offline, you'd have to remove the peering, and it was always kind of tricky. But not anymore. This week, the resizing of peered networks became generally available, and with that, a lot of stress left the building. You can now update the address space or resize it with no downtime at all, and no removal of the peering either. This is one of those small changes I predicted at the start of the year, which seems insignificant on its own, but is part of the maturing of the cloud platform. I'm confident that we will continue to see more of these changes over the next few years too. Now at the start of the show we mentioned Azure Space, but you know what's also out of this world? Cloud Happy. Cloud Happy is a campaign that's running until the end of this year and where you can get access to free certification courses on A Cloud Guru or Pluralsight Skills. And yes, you might be saying, hey Lars, didn't you mention Cloud Happy last week? Are you low on oxygen from all this space talk? Well, yes, I did mention it last week, but I really don't want you to miss out, so I'm going to bring it up again. If you are thinking of taking the AZ900 Microsoft Azure Fundamentals, you should sign up. It's not just access to the courses, you get weekly study guides with curated learning programs and resources. It's also free cert preps for AWS and GCP, so you can be the person who knows about all the major cloud providers. I know. Oh, and there's Terraform and Kubernetes cert prep as well, like all in there. While not exclusively an Azure announcement, I still want to mention that a new version of .NET is coming very soon. This week, the first release candidate of .NET 7, the next version of the Microsoft Development Framework, was out. And after 7 previews of version 7, the release candidate indicates that we are now at a point where features aren't changing anymore for the production version. Azure Functions will support .NET 7, as will containers and other features in Azure. Other significant improvements include performance of the framework, we like that, updates to use the latest modern development practices, also a good thing, better support for ARM64 architecture, and .NET Multi-Platform App UI, or MAUI, and much more. If you want to try out now, using Visual Studio 2022, follow the link in the description. All right, there's no more space for more news in the show this week. What do you think about Azure going to space? Are you excited about global connectivity to improve the lives of everyone as well? Let me know in the comments. Next week, Eric is back. Take good care of him. Bye for now, and keep being awesome cloud gurus.